Welcome back to Mean Streets, where each week we investigate the best, worst, and forgotten movies of film noir. I'm Luke Deckard.
And I'm Matthew Booth.
And today we have a different setup going on because it's Christmas time. We're not going to do one film because we thought we'd relax a bit and give you guys 5 films each that we think are essential noir viewing. So these are our 5 essential pictures that you all need to see. So, you excited, Matt?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I think it'll be good fun.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see if any of our choices match or overlap in some way.
Well, I mean, we talked about this over text. Like our choices, if someone asks you, what are your top 5? That will change for me, and I think for you, like changes day to day. Like there's always something that slips in or slips out.
Yeah, I want to put a caveat on this episode, which is that today, as this is airing, these are my top 5 film noirs.
Yes.
If this were to air tomorrow, it would be completely different.
Yes. Because there's so many, so I just basically picked the ones that stood out in my mind on this particular occasion, and and went from there. Like there's some that are staples that are kind of always there, but there's a couple that tomorrow I might not pick, but I still equally love.
I think that goes for me as well. There are some that I think will always be on there. There is a couple of certainly one that we've covered already on this show, and some which I think we probably will cover in future episodes. But let's see how we go.
Yes. So that's another very good point. Just because we're mentioning these films here doesn't mean we're not going to give them their proper episodes in the future. I think in general all of these will get their own episodes. So we're not going to go into crazy in-depth detail about these films as we would on a specific episode, which is just sort of our overview of some of these films and why we love them and why, if you haven't seen them, you definitely should. So Matt, do you want to go first? What's your 5th? We're going 5-1, everyone. 5-1. So we'll start with you, Matt.
My 5th is Strangers on a Train from 1951.
Okay.
Directed by Alfred Hitchcock from the book by Patricia Highsmith. It's one of the first noirs I saw because when I was about 12, my mum, who was always very open-minded about watching horror films, she's a big horror film fan. We watched Psycho together, and from that, I developed quite a passion for Hitchcock films, which persists to this day, but not quite as strong as it was in my teenage years. And Strangers on a Train was one of the ones I watched, but it came on the back of things like, well, obviously Psycho, North by Northwest, Rear Window, Vertigo, all those. And this was something quite different. This was something much more noir than I'd come across in Hitchcock to that date, certainly to my teenage mind. And I think it's a great premise. I think we've both got someone we want to kill. I'll kill yours, you kill mine. And the good guy treats it as a joke, and the bad guy is serious and carries it out. And I think that's a really good premise for a thriller.
It is. I had to check this. Raymond Chandler wrote the script for this movie.
Chandler wrote the script, yeah. And funnily enough, as with Billy Wilder on Double Indemnity, I don't think Hitchcock and Chandler got on particularly well. I think I don't know how anecdotal it is or conversely how true it is. There's a story of Hitchcock taking Chandler's latest draft of the script and holding it at arm's length with his fingers clutching his nose and dropping it in the waste paper bin. Yeah. So you have 2 big personalities behind this film.
Yes.
In Hitchcock and Chandler, and I'd love to have been a fly on the wall in some of those meetings because Hitchcock was very hands-on in filmmaking, including script writing. So it would have been very interesting to see those 2 at work. But as is often the case, when there's a bit of tension behind the scenes, you end up with a great piece of work. And Strangers on a Train is one of them. It's tense, it's exciting, and it's a scenario that with a stretch of credulity, could happen to you. You know, you don't know who you're going to meet on a train.
No.
And there's always an added frisson for me when you think, well, this is not totally outlandish. This could happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, Strangers on a Train. I think it's a brilliant film.
It's got great performances as well. I think Robert Walker is fantastically eerie in it.
Yeah, very much so. And there's that great scene where he's watching Farley Granger at a tennis match, and everybody's doing the standard tennis acting of looking one way then the next, one way then the next, and Robert Walker is absolutely motionless in the middle of it. It's really chilling.
Yes. This is probably one of Hitchcock's best, I'd say.
Oh, I'd say. I'd take
I'm
it
not
over
really
some
a
of his.
massive fan of him.
That's fair enough. But I'd take it over some of his quote famous classics. You know,
take it over
because I don't think it's quite as famous as it should be. It tends to get overshadowed by the Rear Windows and the Vertigos and you know, even the North by Northwest. But I love that film anyway. So
yeah,
but I think it deserves to be higher up the list of, you know, favorite Hitchcocks than it perhaps is.
I think that's fair enough.
And the climax, there's a famous climax, Strangers on a Train, set on a carousel in a fairground, which isn't in the book, but it is in a book called The Moving Toy Shop by Edmund Crispin, who was a British Golden Age, just at the tail end of the Golden Age, crime writer. But he had a unique ability, Edmund Crispin, to write extremely funny stories that on the flip of a coin or the turn of a page would go very dark and very eerie. And he could write a really good and exciting climax, as he does for The Moving Toy Shop. And Hitchcock just blatantly steals it because it's pretty much scene for scene what happens in the book.
Amazing.
So yeah, that's my first pick, Strangers on a Train.
That's a good pick. I approve. That is not on my list. Strangers on a Train is not on my list.
Well, that's good.
Exactly. So we're you know, it's a diverse group so far. My pick is, because this is Christmas season, I was thinking I did have Christmas on the mind, and this is one of my favorite films, and I think it deserves to be on this list. I picked Lethal Weapon from 1987.
Excellent.
Exactly. I absolutely love Lethal Weapon. I think Mel Gibson and Danny Glover are fantastic in this. Directed by Richard Donner, the guy who directed Superman, the movie. Written by Shane Black. We're big Shane Black fans on this podcast.
We are.
Nice Guys, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, etc., etc. Except for his Predator movie. His Predator movie isn't very good. But I love Lethal Weapon. I've always enjoyed it. I've always said, and this might be controversial, but I've always said Lethal Weapon is more of a Christmas movie than Die Hard. And people get really upset about this.
Well, I wouldn't worry about it, because I always say my favorite Christmas film is Batman Returns. So
that's another great Christmas movie, though. That is a great Christmas movie.
So I'm well in your camp on Lethal Weapon being a Christmas movie.
My whole argument is that A, it is set during Christmas, and B, Christmas is smeared on every scene. Like everywhere they go in this film, there's like Christmas decorations galore everywhere you go. Whereas Die Hard, yeah, they're having a Christmas party. You know, someone said, you know, ho, 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 writes, you know, John McClane writes it on the guy's shirt. Fine, whatever. But it's not like overtly in your face Christmas. And so what I'm saying is, that's why I say it's more of a Christmas movie, because
I would
there's
agree
just
with that.
more there. There's more to chew on with the Christmassiness.
It doesn't really matter to me when Die Hard is set.
No,
Die Hard could be
not
set
really.
in the autumn, you know.
Yes,
but Lethal Weapon is definitely telling you it's a Christmas film.
Yes, and I love it.
Yeah, I do, and I think it's a great example. It's a fun movie for me, and it's a great example of a film that does everything that it promises to do and sets out to do, and does it with a bit of class.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I love the kind of odd coupling going on. I like Riggs and Murtaugh. I think they're such a wonderful. I don't know. They just bounce off each other so wonderfully, and I love their chemistry throughout this whole thing. But I also like that, like the guy who's got his shit together and has a family and all that kind of stuff is Danny Glover's character, and Mel Gibson is the one who doesn't have his shit together. I'm glad that they don't go into stereotypes, and they don't go into cliches too much with this. The most cliched thing by far is the karate fight at the end of the movie that just with Gary Busey, that I'm just like, I don't know what that's about, but I'll take it, I guess.
Is that not about the 1980s?
It is. But yeah, Lethal Weapon is number 5 for me. I think it's a terrific noir movie, well worth watching, well worth adding to your list if you've never seen it. I figure most people have seen it. It's a special one. It's a special one.
I think it's one of those films that people probably have seen, but they probably saw it in the 80s. And I think it's one of those films that you would be surprised. Yes, it's in the 80s, but you'd be surprised at how well it's aged, if you know what I mean.
Oh, it holds up fantastically, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's
phenomenal.
Down to the team making it. That's down to Donna, Gibson, and Glover. You know.
Yeah, this is the classic, like, vintage movie. This is one for the ages. So it's like this had to be on the list, especially because it's Christmas time, especially because of Christmas.
Well, that's good, because I don't think any of mine are set at Christmas.
This is the only one. This is the only one, I think. But how about number 4? What's your fourth?
Well, number 4 is a film from 1950 called In a Lonely Place.
Okay, I know nothing about this one.
Which is Humphrey Bogart and Gloria Graham.
Duh, I do know about this one.
And it's based, I think it's fair to say it's loosely based on a novel by Dorothy Hughes.
Yes.
And what I like about In a Lonely Place, I think it's one of Bogart's best performances. I think he plays a sort of washed up Hollywood screenwriter who's sort of come back from World War II and is down on his luck, as a lot of people were. And he's accused of a murder, and his neighbour, who's played by Gloria Graham, gives him an alibi. And eventually they fall in love and marry. Or he proposes marriage. But as their relationship develops, she starts to wonder whether or not he might have actually killed this man that he's accused of killing. And he has, like, violent outbursts. It's the story of her coming to terms with who she might have got involved with. And as a sideline, who the killer is. But at its heart, it's about a doomed love affair. It's about two people who love each other but might not be able to make it. And it's really sad. It's not your usual noir in the sense that it's sort of man in the street up against a corporation or up against politicians or up against the media. It's a man who's up against himself and the woman who's trying to save him from himself. And it's in places heartbreaking. Bogart is fantastic in it, as is Gloria Graham yet again. And it's probably on the back of this she got the Big Heat gig, but I don't know if that's a fact. And I just think it's a really good film. It's certainly noir to its core in the sense of how dark it is and the way it's shot. It's all shadows and light, and it's a very dark film, but it's also a dark film in the sense of what it's about and what it's saying. And I think it's a really good one. And I think it's one that if people, again, it's not really well known. It gets swamped under The Big Sleep and things like that with Bogart and noir, and it deserves to be higher up the rankings than it is, I think. Again, along with Strangers on a Train, because it's a human drama. It just happens to be shot as a film noir,
Yeah.
And those two things, the human drama and the film noir photography and direction and vibe, really gel together because they're both about the dark heart of human beings. And the sort of crime story is essentially secondary. It's sort of there to, hang the coat of the emotional drama onto. That's the hook that you hang the coat of the actual drama on. It's a fabulous film. Have you seen it?
No, this is one I'm aware of, but I've not seen. So this is one that I'm looking forward to watching for the podcast at some point in the near future, because I see it all the time. I see the book cover for it, because they always use the picture of Gloria Graham and Bogart on, not always, but they use a still from that for the book cover, and I see that quite a bit. So no, this is one I'm very interested to see.
I highly recommend it. It's because it does something different. It's doing something. It's not the usual mystery. The mystery doesn't really matter. I know we say mystery doesn't matter in film noir generally, but it sort of does, doesn't it? It's usually a crime plot that you're following.
Yeah,
but this isn't really. This is more about these two people.
Well, relationships are such a huge part of noir, and that's where I think a lot of times people say the mystery doesn't matter, and that's because you're more interested in the relationship of the protagonist with everybody else, and what kind of scenarios does that get him or her into. And that's why like things like a lot of some of Chandler's work in particular, maybe isn't watertight with its plotting, because there's but there's so much interesting stuff happening character wise that just pulls you in.
Yeah, and this really does. And there's a very famous scene where Bogart and Graham are driving home at night, and he has one of his outbursts. And even now you think of car chases now. This isn't a car chase, but you think of car scenes, where that are dramatic that we do now. This is nail biting stuff. This is really sort of this man is a dangerous man to know.
Right.
And the way that Gloria Graham plays it, she all the time she's thinking to herself, have I made a terrible and maybe fatal mistake here, or am I right and should I trust my instincts? It's highly recommended. I love it.
There you go. Number four. My number 4 is a neo-noir, another neo-noir. I wonder if I think most of mine might be falling into the neo-noir, whereas you're probably falling into a lot of the classic noir.
Yeah, I'm looking at my list now, and not a single one of mine is in color.
Okay. Then we won't. I don't know if we will have any that match then, which is interesting. Well, and I was thinking about that as we were doing it. I was thinking about films that we've already covered on the show, and I was thinking about what might you pick and what I would pick, and trying to all that was going through my head. But for my fourth pick, I chose 2011's Drive, starring Ryan Gosling, Carey Mulligan, and Bryan Cranston.
Great choice.
This film is freaking fantastic. I saw it on a complete fluke. It was during university. I was out with a friend, or we'd been away for the weekend and come back home, and we're just like, oh, what do you want to do? And we're like, oh, let's go to the cinema, and this was playing, and I was like, I like Ryan Gosling. Let's he was young Hercules. Let's go see him in a movie. And so went in really not knowing anything other than just what the tagline, a mysterious Hollywood actor, film stuntman gets in trouble with gangsters. That's all I knew. Thought, yeah, sure, went in. It is a beautiful film. It's shot fantastically. I love looking at this movie. Some of those opening shots of Los Angeles, those skyline scenes and those aerial shots going down, and the early car chases are just fantastic. I love it. And I think Ryan Gosling, someone once said to me, I think it probably said this on another episode of when we talked about Ryan Gosling, someone once said to me that he's like very one note, and he's so not. He does everything from slapstick comedy to deadly serious. And in Drive, he is so scary in this, because you just don't know when he's going to go off. Because when that elevator scene is insane.
It
where
sure is.
it goes from this like moment where he spoiler if you're not seen it, but he is this moment where he finally kisses the girl and then just goes ape shit on the bad guy who's in the elevator, and then there's that just freaky scene. It's just yeah, it's so intense. And then there's the bathroom scene earlier and later in the movie. It's just so bloody and so violent, and that slow like drawl back when he's in the bathroom in that other scene as he kind of comes out of frame, and you just don't know. It's wonderful. I think this is also a fantastic cast. Like in general, so many really great people are in this. Albert Brooks, Oscar Isaacs, Christina Hendricks, Ron Perlman. So many cool people are in this movie, and Drive seems quite popular. I wouldn't say that it's an unpopular film.
No, I wouldn't say so either.
It is probably the director's best as far as I can tell so far. Nicholas Winding Refn. I recently watched another one of his films called something now I can't remember. I will tell you. The Neon Demon. I watched the Neon Demon, and I was hoping for something a bit Drive like esque, but it was not that at all. But yeah, Drive is 4 for me. I think it's a fantastic, one of the best neo noirs for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And it's like you, I saw it purely by chance because a friend of mine I met him for a drink and he just turned up with this Blu-ray and said, "You've got to watch this."
Yeah.
And I'd not heard anything about it. I said, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "Well, just watch it and tell me what you think of it." And I was no preconceptions, no expectations other than, like you say, the synopsis on the back of the box, and it was great. I had a great time. Great time.
Also, great music. I love the music in this movie.
Yeah,
fantastic stuff.
Yeah, and I don't agree. Just to cap, I don't agree that Ryan Gosling is a one-note actor either.
No, he's fantastic. He's great. So that's 4. That's 4 for me. Number 3.
Number 3 for me, because he's got to make an appearance, is a Philip Marlowe film. And it's Murder My Sweet.
That's my number 1. That's my number 1. So let's get into Murder My Sweet. Let's have a little Murder My Sweet chat.
Do you want to leave it for your number 1 and we'll talk about it?
No. No, it's fine. We'll chat about it now.
Well, I think it's a great film. I think it's probably my favorite Marlowe adaptation, in all honesty. I do tend to prefer it to The Big Sleep.
Same.
I think they're probably about the same running time, but Murder My Sweet seems to fly by, whereas I do get bogged down with The Big Sleep. Mainly, as I think we said in the episode on The Big Sleep, because of the overdoing of the Bogart Bacall gimmick.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really do like about Murder My Sweet is just how good an adaptation of Farewell My Lovely is, which is one of my favorite Chandlers. It does what an adaptation should do for me. It streamlines some of the stuff. It gets him to Jules Amthor quicker. It sort of merges a few characters together so that it doesn't sag with the pacing, which doesn't matter so much in a novel, but it does in a film. And I love it when surprise casting pays off. And Dick Powell was not your first choice for Philip Marlowe. He was a light comedian and a singer. And I imagine the reaction will have been similar to, maybe not as harsh as, because they were perhaps easier times, but Daniel Craig as Bond and all the...
Oh, I thought you were going to go Michael Keaton as Batman.
Oh, that's an even better example. Example. That sort of insane preconceived prejudice, and he does. Murder My Sweet and Dick Powell as Philip Marlowe do exactly what Michael Keaton as Batman and Daniel Craig as Bond did, and they just silence them all in 100 minutes.
Yeah,
I
totally
think it's a marvelous. I still think the scene where he's doped up is terrifying. I think the way that is shot and the way it's designed is really creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Does justice to the description in the novel about the 1,000 spiders weaving 1,000 webs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think overall it's well cast. The bloke playing what's the massive client? I can't remember his name now. Moose Malloy.
Moose Malloy. Yeah.
Is brilliant casting. And there's that great opening shot. It's not quite the opening shot, but that great opening shot of him reflected in Marlowe's window, the office window, as the lights.
Oh, I love that. Oh,
that is just so good. So good. And one of the things I've said about Marlowe films in episodes that we've already done is the best ones are the ones where the dialogue comes off as if you've just thought about it and it's not reciting a line of dialogue. And Powell does that. Powell does that. He says things like, "Oh, I've got a rope under you. Here I am sitting there, and you've got a rope around my ears." That's a great line. And he says something about, it sounds screwy. Maybe it is screwy, but it's all I know. That's Marlowe to me.
Yeah,
that's Marlowe to me.
Yeah.
I think it's a brilliant adaptation of one of the best Marlowe novels, and I think Dick Powell is. He struggles with Robert Mitchum for me for my favorite film version of Marlowe. But
he doesn't struggle.
Sometimes he comes on top, sometimes he doesn't. But I think Murder My Sweet is, probably a desert island noir for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's not too much that I can really add to that with such a short time, but no, I agree. I think I love Dick Powell as the choice for Marlowe. I think he is fantastic in this role. It is, like you said, is a kind of a surprise performance, not someone you would expect, but there's a believability to his take on Marlowe in the way that Michael Keaton is believable as Batman. There's just something to it, or Daniel Craig as Bond. Those are good analogies. Like I buy it. Because, and you can kind of see why someone might go with a Robert Mitchum for Marlowe. He's maybe a bit thicker, maybe a bit more gruff looking, but there's something about Dick Powell that is unsurprising. And in a way, like, when you think about like Alan Ladd and like the Glass Key and stuff like that, where you're not really buying tiny little Alan Ladd as a tough guy, even though Dick Powell is more of a trim guy, like I still buy that he has some toughness to him. Later in the film, he's a bit scruffy. He's got some 5 o'clock shadow going on. Like you get a sense of some gruffiness to him. So yeah, and like you said, the cinematography is fantastic. That window scene at the very beginning of the movie where he sees Moose Malloy in the reflection when the lights go off outside is just fantastic. And the cool effects every time he gets knocked out and everything goes ink black and like inky black,
yeah.
Love it.
Which is what the novel says, doesn't it? The novel says a big black hole opened in front of me and I fell into it, and that's what you get.
Yes.
And I like the opening where he says, "I was sitting alone in the office. I'm a homing pigeon." And all I could think about was finding out again how big this city is. And while he's saying that, you just get shots of Los Angeles and these streets, and you get a sense of how big it is as well. It's really well done. It's an absolutely fantastic film.
It's definitely one if you haven't seen it, because it like some Marvel adaptations, this is one that is harder to find and isn't as well known. It seems it's definitely one of the quieter ones. People seem to know Bogart. They what's the other one from the 70s? Elliot Gould. The people know those guys, and Robert Mitchum, of course. Those are the three that people seem to talk about.
Well,
but this one is the hidden gem.
Yeah, I would take Murder My Sweet over The Big Sleep and The Long Goodbye any day of the week.
Same. That's a fantastic choice for your number 3, and that's my number 1. That's a fantastic choice. I take it back. I have 2 black and whites on mine. My third is a black and white, and I chose The Big Heat.
Oh, that was on my first draft of this list.
I sort of wondered if you were going to put that on there, and I thought I would risk it.
Well, it deserves 2 votes anyway. So, I mean, this, just because it's not on my list doesn't mean I think it doesn't deserve to be there, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Well, no, I mean, we could have a laundry list of honorable mentions.
We'd be here all Christmas.
We would. No, I love the Big Heat. I think that's just it is one of the best, literally one of the best film noirs of our time. I'm reluctant to say of all time, but actually if we confine film noir to just that original period, it is definitely one of the best original film noirs.
Original film noirs, yeah, definitely.
I mean, Glenn Ford. I mean, we did a whole episode on this. Fantastic casting, sort of unexpected casting, as we've talked about, because you don't really, expect what happens to happen. The car scene that shocks everyone, is fantastic. With the explosion,
absolutely.
I
showed it recently to some people who'd never seen it, and
yeah,
there was like people jumped and there were gasps at that.
Yes, and again, it's a pacey, punchy movie. It's 130 minutes, or 1 hour and 30, and just it moves like the wind, and it's scary. I think what's his face, Vince Stone, played by Lee Marvin, is a fantastic villain. He is just scary, and Gloria Graham playing Debbie Marsh is tragic and beautiful, and the chemistry bouncing off of people, and the righteous anger and vengeance that Glenn Ford's character Dave Banyan is charging through the picture with is just outrageous, but wonderfully outrageous. It's such a fantastic movie that it had to be on my list. It had to be on.
I agree with all that. And Lee Marvin is intimidating. He's scary, and what I like about it is that Glenn Ford isn't. So that adds to the power behind Glenn Ford's lust for justice and or revenge.
Yeah,
that he's willing to go up against someone who is obviously. It adds a dimension of threat.
Yeah,
and in turn says a lot about the character of Dave Banyan, which is Glenn Ford's character, that he's willing to take that risk. It's a brilliant film. It
is. That's my number 3. What's we done your third, right? That was done my Murder My Sweet. So what's your number 2?
My number 2 is it's got to be on, and it's the Maltese Falcon.
Okay, yes. I considered it, but I kept it off. I only have one left, and I didn't pick The Big Sleep, and I didn't pick the Maltese Falcon, but I respect those films. Obviously. They're honorable mentions for me, but tell me why. What is it about the Maltese Falcon for you that has to get it on this?
Well,
list?
The Maltese Falcon is one of those films that I think everything that needs to be said has been said. But it was one of the very first noirs I saw. It was totally uncompromising. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I went straight out and got the book and read it and thought, my God, that was a good adaptation. I'm always a fan of films where the adaptation is faithful or does justice.
Yeah, it's strong here, yeah.
And it's a really good representation of Hammett's novel on the screen. I love the casting. I think it's universally well cast. It's no surprise that Greenstreet and Peter Lorre went on to do more films as a double act, if we can call them that. And I love the fact that there's no sort of build up to it, apart from that sort of crawl that explains the history of the Falcon that only lasts a couple of seconds. You are straight into Sam Spade saying to Miles Archer, Miss Wonderly here wants us to find her sister. She knows she's in the city. You're in it straight away. And once it's got you by the scruff of the neck, it never lets you go. Until that final brilliant classic line at the end, the closing line. Yeah. And it's got all the noir elements. It's shot brilliantly. It's got possibly the best femme fatale, certainly one of the best femme fatales. And
Well, it's the very first femme fatale.
The very first femme fatale.
Bridget O'Shaughnessy. She is number one, numero uno.
And it's just, I think it's a film. It's almost impossible not to admire. And so well done, so well presented, and it's a milestone, and it deserves to be. And it's often cited as one of the best films ever made, and it deserves to be. It's often cited as one of the best noirs, and it deserves to be. And I just think it deserves a place on my top 5.
There you go. I think that makes sense. I don't disagree with anything you said there. I think the Maltese Falcon is a fantastic film, and you're right. As an adaptation goes, it's a bit like Murder My Sweet. It's a really slick adaptation. It's faithful enough. Some minor changes here and there, but it understands the heart of the book, and it pulls you in there, which I like. My only qualm is I've never really bought Bridget O'Shaughnessy. She's not who I picture. Bridget O'Shaughnessy is much more attractive and much more seductive than what we get in this picture.
No, I'm glad you said that.
That's my only thing.
I'm glad you said that, because I often think if you swapped her for Archer's wife, or even for the secretary, even for, she's called Effie, would that not be better casting?
Possibly.
I always, there are certain films that I've watched over the years, and I think if you just did a bit of tweaking on the casting, this would have been better than it is.
Yes.
Yeah. And I do know, I share that sort of reservation, but it doesn't get in the way for me.
No, me neither. It's just one small qualm.
It's an itch you can't scratch. Yeah, it's an itch you can't scratch.
That's a good pick. That's a very, very, very good pick. So, my number 2, I had to pick Blade Runner.
I knew you were going to put Blade Runner.
It had to be. It was almost number 1, but that one out to Murder My Sweet. But Blade Runner is number 2. I think I love this movie. I love everything about it. I love the story. I love the characters. I love the behind the scenes. I love everything about this complicated, nutty movie, and how uncompromising Ridley Scott was dealing with producers who were trying to push him around to put crap in there that didn't belong, and just constantly fighting for decades to get his version of the thing done and out there.
That was going to be my question. Are you which version do you say is the version?
I go with the final cut for sure. I hate I don't hate, but the happy ending version of it is just stinks to me when they're suddenly driving in the woods and it's all green and nice. It's just like no, that's not the world. That's not
noir. That's not noir for me.
No. But I love the character of Rick Deckard. I love is he or isn't he a replicant? He's blatantly not, but I like the controversy.
I like the. I agree with all this. I think it's good in the way that, like, you very often get close-ups of Harrison Ford's eyes, which causes the test. And I think that's a nice little touch. And I can almost imagine Scott saying, "This is what we'll do because it will really mess with their heads."
Yes, because I think Scott's the one who says he is, and Ford's always been like, "No, he's not," because that ruins his character arc entirely.
Ford is absolutely right.
Yes. But I love it. I love the sympathetic villains. I'm quite sympathetic towards Roy and his cohort. They just want to live. They just want to live. Yes.
They want to be left alone.
I mean, every time we're watching something, me and my wife, and someone says, "I've seen things," I always go into the speech. Always. And I say it in its full, and she just like, "Shut up." And I'm like, "I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire." I love it. I just think I get why people didn't take to it at the time. It was certainly it was definitely one that was ahead of its time, and I get it.
Definitely.
But it's fantastic, and I love that it's become a classic. And I don't even know if I want to call it a cult classic anymore. I think it's just become a classic.
I've always
Got a
liked
sequel,
Blade Runner.
for goodness sake. It got a legacy sequel. It's no longer a cult classic.
It's not a cult classic. No, it's earned its stripes, that's for sure. And I think it was a good career move for Harrison Ford, and I think it was a brave one at the time. Since it's so different to sort of Indiana Jones and Han Solo, which is really what all we knew him for.
Yes.
And it shows that he wasn't necessarily, he sort of is now, but he wasn't necessarily one of those blokes who would just sort of take it easy and take the money. He wanted to do things that pushed him and challenged him.
Yeah.
And
there was definitely a period where he went through that phase, where it felt like he went through that phase, but he made cool choices back in the day, and then he made some interesting ones. His most recent interesting choice is Shrinking on Apple Plus. Highly recommend that.
I've just started that.
That's him actually acting again, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. And that speech, Roy's speech, I've seen things. That's one of the great movie speeches. That's up there with Quint's speech about the Indianapolis in Jaws, easily. Yeah, easily. Yes. It's a brilliant film. It's a great choice. Great choice. I knew you were going to put it on. I was just a question of where.
There we are. So we're down to your number one choice, because we've tackled mine.
Well, my number one choice, I won't speak too long about it, because all I'll say is listen to our episode on it. But this for me is Noir at its absolute best, and it is out of the past.
Yes. That is.
It's as close to Philip Marlowe in the day that he should be. In the time he was set, that you're going to get with Robert Mitchum in the role. I love it even for that.
Yeah.
But the femme fatale, way up there. She is one of the best.
Gosh, she's gorgeous.
Kirk Douglas as a gangster is brilliant and playful, but dangerous. And it's all told in flashback, which does appeal to me sometimes when it's done well. But the way it's shot, the way it's lit, that there are moments in this film where Mitchum is thinking on his feet, and you have the overriding sense that Kirk Douglas's character knows he is, and that he's about to walk into mortal danger, and then something as easy as spilling a drink gets him out of it. And he has to sort of hold his breath for all those minutes. That sounds like a very minor scene, but when you watch it, it's as tense as anything Hitchcock did.
As number ones go, that is a fantastic number one.
I thought it was. Yeah, I thought it was. It's one of those that I can watch over and over and over again, and never get tired of. And it ends on a note of ambiguity, which I also like. It's got a proper ending, but you can interpret it in one or two ways, and you will be satisfied with either. I recommend people go. Well, first of all, I recommend people watch it, and then listen to our episode on it to get a bit of background to it, because it's absolutely superb.
Well, those are our top five. Those are I think these are excellent choices.
I think these are excellent choices, and I think
should we read them off so that everyone can get them in one swift go?
Yeah, and when we do this, you'll get a sense of we've spanned all of Noir. I think original and neo. So we've done pretty well.
So my top five, starting from the bottom to top, is Lethal Weapon, Drive, The Big Heat, Blade Runner, and Murder My Sweet.
And mine were Strangers on a Train, In a Lonely Place, Murder My Sweet, The Maltese Falcon, and Out of the Past.
Well, we hope everyone is having a good holiday, has had a nice Christmas and Boxing Day and all that. But in the meantime, while you're lazying about, check out some of these suggestions, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You've got 10 great films there to talk. Well, 9, because we picked one that was the same. Great films to go to sit through and enjoy, and find something new from, perhaps. And that wraps up our Christmas special. We hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another case. In the meantime, please like and subscribe, and be sure to take care walking down those mean streets.